Hi, welcome to the Scouting BSA Animation Merit Badge class. My name is Ryan Lee. I am your Merit Badge counselor. Let's get started. But first, I have an animation quote for you. It doesn't have to look real, it just has to look believable. Every animator ever, which was true in the studio that I used to work in. Whenever we would get frustrated with our animations, we had to remind ourselves that, hey, we don't have to follow every physical law. It doesn't have to behave the way things do in real life, but it does have to be believable, and an appealing animation like that will be enjoyable to watch for the viewer and also the animator as well. So what are we doing here today? First, a little introduction of who I am, then a definition of animation, brief history of animation, the 12 principles of animation, and finally, careers in animation. So if you don't have your merit badge worksheet printed out, ready to be filled out, do that now before we start. So you'll fill those out, and then you'll send those to me, and we're going to cover most everything except for the actual animations we're going to do. Okay, let's move on. Who am I? As I said, my name is Ryan Lee. I'm a game artist and animator. I am a professional visual artist since 1999. I've been working in the games industry since 2004. I have a master's degree in digital game development from Southern Methodist University in 2005. And I worked in the game industry where I've worked on over 10 published titles. But currently, since 2011, I've been working for the U.S. Navy making serious games, which are things that usually involve, training simulation. We do web games that are usually designed to teach something other than or a different purpose than entertainment. So that's what I've been doing there. And here is a demo reel. I'll let you watch this. This is a pretty old one, but this is the stuff I was doing in the retail games industry. So these are clips from the game Ben 10 Alien Force: The Rise of Hex. I was the lead animator on this project. I animated about half of the animations, and then managed the other team of animators. I had about 3 or 4 animators working for me. And this is just a select few animations here. This is for a game called Tecmo Bowl Kickoff, which was actually changed to be called Tecmo Family Fun Football. So all these animations weren't actually used in that, but this is a fun project regardless. And this was for my master's thesis project. It focused less on animation and more on rigging, which we'll probably talk about that a little bit later. But anyway, this is what I've done here. All right, so let's move on to the definition of animation. So animation is a dynamic visual medium produced from static drawings, models, or objects posed in a series of incremental movements that are then rapidly sequenced to give the illusion of lifelike motion. So, and that's right from the dictionary, right? So, but I think the main thing you want to focus on is this illusion of motion. So you see this here. That's really what we're looking at. So you're looking at a series of still images or pictures or whatever. It could be even if it's just like a model you've ever done, claymation or something. But these are images that are then sequenced through time to give that illusion of motion. So, and that's really what you want to focus on there. But you can give me the dictionary definition, but it's that illusion of motion that is the most important. So let's do a brief history of animation. Okay, so first, so animation is much older than cinema. So a lot of times we just think of them as movies, but it's been around for a while. Scientists have found bowls and cave drawings dating to about 5,000 years ago, where people would try to achieve the illusion of motion. Early examples include shadow play or shadow puppets, if you've ever done that, shining a flashlight on a wall, and someone holds their hands up in different shapes to create an illusion of like a different creature, like a bird or a dog or something. So that's something they would do back then when there was no TV or video games. And we have an early. I've got this here. This is the magic lantern, which is the earliest is one of the earliest animation devices. There's also the stroboscopic effect, which is, if you've ever seen a car commercial, you have probably seen this. If you look at the wheels and how they turn, sometimes what happens is the way the wheel turns so fast that our eye captures an image of it at one position, and the wheel goes all the way around until it's almost back to where it was before. And then, but our eye captures it, and it looks like, over time, it looks like it's slowly going backward rather than quickly going forward. So take a look at the next time you see a car commercial on TV or any kind of clip of a car in a movie. You might see something like that. That's called the stroboscopic effect, and that's what led to the or the influence of the phenakistoscope here and the zoetrope. So this is 1833 on this, and 1866 on the zoetrope. The zoetrope, if you've ever been to the Exploratorium up in San Francisco, you've probably seen one of these. They have at least one there that they have for show. And of course, here's the flip book in 1968. And this is, and when I was a kid, we all did this. Maybe kids your age don't do this anymore, but whenever we had a blank notepad, we would make one of these things. And I had pointed out the magic lantern here. So the magic lantern is an image projector using pictures on sheets of glass. And since some of the sheets contain moving parts, it is considered the first example of projected animation. So the light would come through here and project images on the wall, and the slide, the sheets would move, so it would have the illusion of motion. All right, so next we have the age of cinema. So this is the bulk of animation, right? So this is the first, I think this is the first time they use this technique in cinema. 1907, The Haunted Hotel. And I'm going to play it for you here in a little bit. Now, people flipped out about this, the stop motion technique. Just using, and it was just very simple, but at the time it was so unique, and it was something that people had never seen before. So you kind of see how these things, you watch the window and the trees here. Yeah, see that? I mean, over 100 years ago, that was really something else. So, I'll let it go to the live action point here. When those windows move, people just, they absolutely lost it, So, yeah, A Haunted Hotel, 1907. And moving along here, animation in the age of cinema, as we continue. Steamboat Willie in 1928. Steamboat Willie was the first animation with sound. And you can watch this if you subscribe to Disney Plus. You can watch this clip, or you can watch this this animated short. It's black and white, and but it's the first one that had sound. So that was almost 100 years ago now. So the first full-length feature was this one here. It was a German film called Die Abenteuer des Prinzen Ahmed, directed by Lotte Reiniger. And Snow White was the first full-length feature in color. And this is the point here. This is in 1937. So in the 30s was when Disney started developing the 12 principles of animation, which we'll talk about later, and we have to use for our worksheet. So these are those first examples of the full-length feature films that are animated. And then moving along here, in the 1930s through the 1950s, more animated characters popped up. When television became more prominent in the 50s, animated television programs became more prevalent, effectively eliminating animated shorts from the cinema or from the movie theaters. In case you didn't know, so when people would go to the movie theater, they wouldn't just see a movie, they would see like a newsreel, and then sometimes they would see a short, like one of these, like a Bugs Bunny show, or like a Bugs Bunny short, or a Popeye short or something like that. So, but when people got TV, they could just go home and watch it there. So we have these 5 characters here. So I have Popeye, Donald Duck, added to the Disney universe, Bugs Bunny, Woody Woodpecker and Tom and Jerry, which I believe Tom and Jerry is considered, by some metrics, would be the most popular animated cartoon of all time. So now we have animation in American television. So this kind of started in the 60s, moving on. So the first, so Huckleberry Hound, this one over here, was the first animated TV show. And this guy here, this is Yogi Bear. He was very popular, so he got his own show 3 years later. Then the Flintstones became the first primetime animated series, which means it was shown at night when the kids weren't watching necessarily. So it was more aimed at adults. It had kind of more adult themes in many ways. The Pink Panther here was a spin-off of a live-action movie starring Peter Sellers back in the early 60s. So this is a cartoon. In 1964, the studio won an Academy Award for best short film. And then during this time, Hanna-Barbera became popular during this time, and then it really solidified the Saturday morning cartoon tradition, which has kind of ended now, sadly, for people like me who kind of grew up with that. So it's animations, but at this time, animation studios began cutting costs by reducing the quality of the animators, the number of frames. They would reuse a lot of animation, so they could crank out more clips, more shows on a quicker and cheaper. And then in the 1970s and 80s, many toy properties were made into animated television programs, basically just one giant commercial. So such as Transformers here, this is one of my favorites, G.I. Joe, He-Man, and the Masters of the Universe. The 80s, they really took off with the animated. It was basically a 30-minute commercial for a toy. So now we're in the modern era. We have a couple of more firsts here. So we have The Beauty and the Beast was the first animated feature. The first animated feature to be nominated for an Academy Award, and that was 1991. So that was 30 years ago now. And then we have The Simpsons, which it's still going on. It's still going on. This is the longest running American sitcom here, and it's animated. Shows like The Flintstones kind of led to what The Simpsons are today. And here, you probably all seen this too as well. Toy Story was the first full-length animated film that was entirely computer generated, all 3D polygonal data. So that's kind of a brief history, and of course, a lot has happened since then. But now, I would say 3D animation, 2D animation is pretty commonplace. Back in the 90s, 25 years ago, it was kind of a new thing when movies were 3D, obviously, because Toy Story just did it in 1995. And now they have, we can get one of those every week if we need to, and they use a lot of 3D animation in other movies as well. So how do they come up with some best practices or rules for these animations? Well, as I said before, Disney developed the 12 principles of animation that's still considered kind of the gold standard even today, even as we move into 3D animation. So let's move into the next section, which is the 12 principles of animation. And here I pulled them all in here, and there's 12 principles: squash and stretch, anticipation, staging, straight ahead action and pose to pose, follow through and overlapping action, slow in and slow out, arc, secondary action, timing, exaggeration, solid drawing, and appeal. So I'm going to go through each one of these one by one, and you can obviously stop and go back if you need to. Squash and stretch. Now, when I was being trained as an animator, this was drilled into me as probably the most important of the principles. It's the basic one to remember, and it really adds so much. So the thing about squash stretch is when bodies then come into contact with something, or they move quicker, they change shape. So you have, you can see this ball up here at the top. The one on the left does not have squash and stretch, but the one on the right does. You can see how the ball crushes down to a flatter sphere or a flatter ellipse when it hits the plane here. It's more like how balls would react in real life, right? Because when, I mean, we don't see it, but if you were to look at a ball bouncing in slow motion, when it gets to the ground, especially like a rubber ball you would use in like a like a four-square game at school, it would crush down when it hit that when it hit the ground, and sometimes it would even pop back up and then it kind of stretch the other way. I mean, very subtle, but this gives the preservation of volume. so when it squashes down, it doesn't just shrink; it actually stretches the other way, and then it looks like it's being flattened, and it really kind of gives weight to the character animation. It feels like it's actually in the scene. Here's some other examples of it. Here, if you see this cat here, so you see when he jumps up, he stretches, and when he drops to the ground, he kind of his back body kind of squishes down when he hits the ground, and you can see how stiff this without example is. And here's a slow motion version here with where it says free. You see it squashes down, but it expands a little bit, like balloons up like a balloon, and then jumps back up. And when it jumps, it stretches out. So you have the squash and stretch. And this is, and like I said, this is the most important one of all 12 principles. If you can just remember one, this is the one you want to remember. And they're all important, obviously, but this is, I think, is the most important to at least get this. Now, I want to point out this ball animation here. The ball animation is kind of like the intro level animation you want to do, because it hits a lot of these animation principles. As you can see, you already saw it here with the squash and stretch. So, so you're gonna. I want you to remember that ball animation because we're going to talk about it later on in this class. All right, anticipation. This is the wind up before a character takes an action. So the character or the object would do something to kind of hint that they're going to be doing another motion. So the examples here are in this Eastlink wireless commercial over here. You can see this person. See how she squats down, gets ready to jump. The squatting down is the anticipation. You know what she's got her hands out. You know she's going to just fly or jump or something. And you can see over here, this is a great example from, actually there's a studio that provided these examples, and I put them in the source here, and I think this is a good example. Top one does not have anticipation, right? It just moves and stops at the next spot, but on the bottom it winds up, it curls back, so you know it's like it's getting ready to move, and then it moves. So I think this really gives a good example of that anticipation. So you want to show the viewer what's about to happen, or like give them a sense sometimes that about what is going to happen. Staging. Now, this is about what we are looking at in the scene. What are the actors doing? You want to draw viewers to focus on what you want them to pay attention to. So, and this is not this is not only for animation. This is for any film. So, like the way you stage a scene or a shot is really important. Now, when you are drawing it, or when you are doing animation, you kind of have to plan this ahead of time. You can't go back and shoot the shot later like you would if you had live actors. So you can see here. Here's an example here in its top left here. So you want them to. You see this guy here. You know, there's these people who are walking by, and then he's clearly he notices, you know, there's some commotion going on outside of his office cubicle. You're seeing him alone and kind of unaware of what's going on, and then they focus on here, and then when they zoom out, you see, oh, there's here's another kindred spirit. They've got an idea of how to handle the situation. Here is a clip from Toy Story. Story 2, I believe, and it is you can kind of see what Jesse's seeing. So when it gets down below, she just sees the bottom part. So she's then then tossed back. So then you can get an idea of how she feels about the situation by really focusing on her face and what she is viewing. And here's a great example here: poor staging and good staging here. So you can see from the good staging here that the character on the left is clearly angry or something like that, or frustrated or something. You wouldn't see that from this angle here. It just doesn't work. You see his hands are out. You don't really know what he's doing, but you can really see that, hey, this guy is showing some frustration here. Okay. Okay, so we have here straight ahead action and pose to pose. Now, I consider this two different animation techniques. So if you notice, so a pose to pose is kind of a way where you start your animation as these keyframes. Like, this is where I want my my object to start here, and in frame 1 I want it to end up here. How is it going to get to that spot? So you kind of have the timing already laid out. You know how long it's going to be. If they're going to jump, you know they're going to be up here. So you start with these keyframes, and then you draw, or you fill in all the gaps in between after you kind of know the general timing of the scene. Now, straight ahead action, you don't do that. You start animating. You're like, hey, I'm just going to start and see where it goes. So you kind of start, and you start from, if you want the character here, and you say, I'm going to have this object move in this direction. Then you just have them move, and you just start drawing. You frame by frame. You don't really plan the end and to kind of fill in the gaps. You do kind of start one by one. It's kind of more like 2D. I would almost say 2D animation, like flipbook style, as opposed to the pose to pose is more 3D style, because you have the computer to fill in all those in between frames. Whereas straight ahead action, if you're drawing it yourself, you've got to do all of them. And you often on a flipbook, you will do that yourself by starting from frame 1 and then just keep going. And there's not always a plan for how it's going to finish out. So okay. Follow through and overlapping action. Now this one here is probably my second favorite. I like to focus on the squash and stretch, and follow through and overlapping action. These, I think, really add a lot to the character. So what this is it's parts of the movement that kind of follow the laws of physics, inertia. A lot of times there's secondary characteristics, tails, hair. You can see here on the cat here. Look at the tail on the left there. See how the tail, the cat jumps up and the tail goes down. When he falls back down, it goes back up. Whereas without, look how stiff the tail looks. There's just not a lot of appeal there. It looks a lot more fluid here. It just adds, it's more interesting to the animation. And also this girl here too. You see the hair goes up and it flips back down as she jumps back down. But here it's stuck to her back. And here's a clip that I did just like a portfolio piece many years ago of an attack. You can see his beard flips up. I included that beard just for that, just so I can add the follow through and overlapping action. Also his club too also kind of adds a little bit of that too, because as he goes through, it kind of flops over his back as well. It's a really interesting looking, it provides an interesting look, and I think it really adds a lot to your character. Okay, slow in and slow out, or ease in and ease out is what you might see if you're using a computer program. It's really important to kind of to notice that every movement takes time to get up to speed, right? And I think this example here in the top right here with this little blue pebble guy is a really good one. For no ease, look how stiff it happens. Like when this little pebble takes off, it's going the same speed the entire time, right? And that's not how you would be. If you were to start from a stop and start running, you would take time to speed up to get to your top speed. And then when you slow down, you would then gradually slow down. Even if you were very quick, you still have to do that. And this bottom one here, ease in and ease out, look how it gradually gets up to speed and then it slows down. So, and what I want you to notice about this is see how these draw the frames in here, and see how all these frames on the no ease one on the top, they all are the same distance apart. That means it's going the same speed. But here on the ease in and ease out, at the beginning and the end of an animation, look at all those frames. They're all kind of overlapping each other, right? And then when you get towards the middle, they're almost completely not even touching at the middle. There's just a little bit of overlap right there, and right in the middle one and the one right to its right. That shows that it's moving faster at that point, and you can really get that here in this ball animation here. So you have this. If you have a ball, when it starts to drop, it goes slowly. So all the frames kind of overlap, and as they get closer to the ground, they start to separate. See, there's more space between this one than there is between these two here, and there's even a lot of space here. And then you get down here, and then you hit the ground, and then you still have some space, and then it slows down. And as these are overlapping here, because when you get to the top of an arc or of a ball bouncing, it starts to slow down. So notice what I think is the most important part about this, not just the concept, but also how you represent it. And what I mean by that is when you draw your thumbnail images, when you want to show slow movement, your frames are going to be closer together, or sometimes overlapping. And when they're going faster, they're going to be a lot further apart. So, and these are really important because these really, the slow in and slow out really provide a smoother animation. That's really important to keep in mind. And speaking of smoothness, we also have arcs. Things don't move in straight lines. It's really important to get things moving in an arc. If you have any kind of movement, if you have a computer program you're using, one of the best tools they have is to show the arcs that certain bones or objects follow. And what you want to do is you turn that on, and you want to make sure that you're not seeing any straight lines anywhere, because that's not how things work. Look at this guy's arms and the hands, see? Especially when they're attached to his arms. They end up moving in a very smooth arc-like motion. So that's something really to keep in mind. If your movements are too straight, it's going to look very robotic and not realistic. It's not going to be believable. All right, secondary action. Now we're getting into some more of the kind of showing the look and feel, the emotions of a scene, the mood. Secondary action is something other than the primary action that reinforces the character. So it's not necessarily how you do an animation clip, but it's something that reinforces the mood. So look here at the top here. This guy here, I mean, so he is clearly, I'm assuming this is a phone. It looks like it could be a phone. He's waiting for a call or something, and he's pretty nervous, right? Why? Because he's tapping his hand. His face is his eyebrows are upturned, so he kind of has a nervous look. His foot is tapping because he's just waiting. He's getting very impatient. And here you have these three examples here. Same character doing the same thing. He's just walking, right? But you can really show his mood by that secondary animation. Here you have his head down. He's moving. His arms are just very stiff. He just kind of no nonsense. He's walking. He's maybe deep thought, but he's not really thinking of anything. It's just very stiff. The one right next to it, well, he's showing how happy he is because he's listening to music. He's got a smile on his face. His head's bobbing. He's got those headphones in. He's got his thumb moving on his smartphone. The one on the right, well, this is a sad, cold day because you can see how windy it is. That scarf really shows how cold and blustery it is, and his eyes are closed. His head's down a little bit. So it's a cold day. It's miserable. He's not really having a good time. So anything else that reinforces the mood of the scene. That's what you want to see in the secondary action. Timing. So this is really related to that slow in and slow out, and maybe those arcs as well, right? When does each action or event happen? And as I said before, fewer frames for faster movements, more frames for slower movements, as you can see here. So I'm gonna go back to this. It's the ball animation. The ball animation is a really good exercise for beginning animation. See up here, it's going slower, so there's lots more frames in a small amount of space. Things are going faster here, so there's a lot less or a lot fewer frames in the same amount of space. So here you're seeing it's going just this loop here, and it's like what? You already have 4 frames. Over here, it's way further distance, but only 3 frames. It's going to go faster here and slower here, and you really want to so you want to time this out. So for faster movements, you want to have fewer frames. Now I'm going to go back to this this attack I did here. So when he punches, see, if you notice when he does his punch, that first punch, it takes like a split second, right? So I'm gonna do it again here. Look at that punch. It's very quick because that's meant to look fast. If you do it too slow, it's not going to look like a good punch at all. It's going to look pretty weak. So it's important to get that timing right. For the faster movements, you're going to have fewer frames. For the slower movements, you're going to have more frames. Okay, again, with really that mood that we're talking about, exaggeration. Animation has the benefit of you can push things, right? You can push things past reality. Push the pose past or to the extremes. Now this really avoids kind of like a stiff character, avoids kind of characters looking flat or looking almost too real. You want to really use the benefits of animation here, and this is what I talked about before about being believable but not realistic. So here we have at the top here, you see this this frying pan attack guy here. So I mean, the one on the left is perfectly fine, right? I mean, that looks like how it would look in real life if someone really smacked someone on the head with a frying pan. But this one here, it looks way more exciting. Look, he jumps up, his whole body curves, he slams down, and then the guy who gets hit, he gets squashed all the way to the ground. Over here, this other one, the angry face rather, you can really push that all the way. It's not just it's more than what a human could do, right? But you're really going to push those, and I think that's the benefit of it. And see how you're pushing these here. See, I mean, they're perfectly fine, but just push it a little bit further. Go a little bit further. Exaggerate a little bit more. And I love this little clip of Donald Duck here. See, he's like, hey, you know what? I'm not interested in this, and he puts his face up directly above almost what a human couldn't do, and it's a really good exaggerated pose here. All right, solid drawing. Now this, so 2D drawing fundamentals are really important here. Okay, so understanding. So what I mean by solid drawing is you want your drawing to feel solid, like it actually has volume to it. So that's what they meant by solid drawing. It's not flat, but it actually has weight. And this really is where you get the perspective right to make sure that when they turn and move, the characters maintain their volume and their size. If they start turning and they look weird, like it's going to look. You might have seen things like that where a character might turn to the side and then the shape changes a little bit, and then they don't look right. It just doesn't look right. But if you have a really good understanding of the human form or the object, just kind of good 2D drawing fundamentals, you can when you're animating a scene by hand in this case, because remember this came from Disney when they were doing these by hand. When you do that, when you draw those, you could really feel like those things are real. It's something that kind of is taken care of for you with a 3D animation, but it's still something. It's still a really good thing to keep in your mind, that you want to make sure that the character feels like they actually have a volume to them. And finally, here we have appeal. This is the last one. Interesting and appealing characters are more memorable. So, here I have some. I've got some from different movies. Here's Gru, SpongeBob, Russell from Up, Mickey Mouse, and Bugs Bunny. So they have some character to them, right? There's something that you recognize, like when you see a silhouette, without just like a shadow of Mickey Mouse, you know exactly who it is. He has that appeal. He's got that smile. He's got those eyes. They have the movement. I posted some clips from Fortnite because I thought, or I saw an old clip from the Game Developers Conference a few years ago, where the art director for Fortnite, they talked about how they iterated over the characters multiple times so they found something that was appealing to them. So it was just a good example. You can even kind of see here these the appeal of these characters here. I mean, the big expressive eyes. I think this makes a huge. Like the better lighting, so you can see their faces, as opposed to these ones here. They have. They don't look as appealing. I mean, they're tough. They're the cool characters, but like the eyes are set back. They don't really. You can't interact with their faces much. So. So if you could look that up, you check it out. What they did with the Fortnite characters was pretty interesting. And I'm not a big Fortnite fan, but I thought that part was pretty cool. Okay, so that's the 12 principles of animation. So make sure you fill that out on your worksheet, and then in the next section, we're going to be going to talk about careers in animation. Now, there's a lot more careers in animation today, I would say, or I should say more varied careers than ever before, because of the preponderance of media we have, right? So I'm just going to give a few of them here, and we can talk about them. So we have first would be a 2D animator. So this would be something, or a person who would work on maybe a 2D animated cartoon, or even just creating 2D animated scenes, even for commercials or social media. It doesn't have to be for a show or a movie, but this is someone who would be drawing, or maybe doing some in the computer, or maybe a little bit of both. So you're doing both drawing and you're letting the computer do some of the animation for you. Right now, it's kind of these days I would say it's more of a mix. I mean, there are some people who do it traditionally, where it's all by hand, but I think most people will use, or most studios will use, a combination between the 2D drawing and the computer as an assistant. And there's lots of stuff out there, but if you want to get good at it, I would say focus on those 2D drawing fundamentals. That's a really important thing. And then just make your own animations. So those are two things you can do to get better at those. A 3D animator. I should also say, let me go back to the 2D one real quick here. There's also games as well. And there's a lot of 2D games these days, and you can always, so there's games, there's movies, there's commercials, there's TV, even advertisements. But, if you're going to be drawing, I think that's something that, those are some jobs that 2D animators can do. Okay, so a 3D animator is someone who uses a 3D program like Maya or Blender or 3D Studio Max, and they don't draw the animation, but they usually use what is called a skeleton or controls. I mean, it depends on the software they're using. So that's what 3D animation is, and 3D animation is obviously, it's pretty big. Every Pixar movie is a 3D animated movie. Video games, they're mostly 3D. But even TV, so games, and any kind of game nowadays, even web games can be 3D. But you can also do, as I said before, they are commercials, advertising. So the concepts could be the same, but your job would be different. You'll be using more of the software, obviously, whereas 2D animation will be using maybe a combination of both. On both a 2D animation side and a 3D animation side, you will it's really important to have good 2D drawing fundamental skills. So a graphic artist or visual designer. Now, for this, for an animator in this case, you might be animating, maybe not characters, maybe not cars, maybe maybe not 2D animations. Like it's not like a movie, but there's animation in almost anything these days. So this is something where you can do is use a program like After Effects, and you're animating shapes or graphics just to make this a video scene look a lot more interesting. But it's usually combined with other things. Usually, you might be a web designer or a graphic artist, graphic designer. I don't know if there's a lot of just specific animator roles out there where you're just doing that type of thing, like animating a logo on screen or something. But it is something that is out there. You would use animation for graphic design these days. So those are 3 careers you could have in animation. There are probably others, and a lot of those stem off from those. But those are just 3 that you can look at. So that concludes the class. And if you're interested in more, there's a lot more you can look at. You can look at I've posted some links, or I posted here's a clip from the 3D animation program called Blender. It's free to download, always free. You can download it. I am going to be using that for the animation clip that you're going to make for the merit badge for 3D. If you like 2D, you can use this tool called Powtoon, which I have not used personally, but I hear good things about it, or I've heard good things about it. So this is something you can use. And like I said, that concludes it. That concludes the class. So make sure you fill out the merit badge worksheet and get it to me so I can check it off on your blue card. Thanks for your time. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see y'all in the next video.